What's the dumbest thing you believed as a kid? When I was pretty young, probably about 5 years old, I met the Black Power Ranger and got a picture of him signed. In the picture you could see that he was missing his middle finger, and my mom told me it was because he had flipped his mom off, so she cut it off. I believed it until I was about 20 years old when my mom told me she had lied about it and didn't actually know what happened. Growing up, I told so many people this guy's mom cut his finger off. Once I was playing with some toys and my mom was talking on the phone to her friend. I guess they were talking about kids growing up and having families someday because my mom puts her hand over the phone and asked me if I wanted kids someday and if I wanted boys or girls. I gave it some thought and said that I wanted one boy and one girl. For the longest time after this, I thought that it had been completely decided, like my mom was just on the phone with whoever you call to place an order for kids, and my order had been finalized. When I was a kid, my mom explained to me that we all had belly buttons because that's how our moms fed us before we were born. So I thought when you got pregnant, your belly button opened up and you just put whatever you wanted to down there. Like I thought women were just shoving chicken legs in their belly buttons. Plot twist. I'm a postpartum nurse now. People don't like people that grow vegetables in their house. I secretly celebrated my mum's poor in-house gardening skills because her tomato plants never had any tomatoes. I was about 11 when I figured out what those tomato plants were. That actor/TV characters would have to come back into a studio for each rerun of a show/movie. I would always be so amazed that people would have the time to go into a room with a camera multiple times a day just so I could watch them do the same thing over and over again. I used to think that laugh tracks were somehow real life, like I was hearing everyone else laughing who was watching the same show I was. In hindsight, this is really stupid. Obviously the sound is coming from the speakers. But growing up we only had TV at my grandma's place and I remember laughing really loud when the laugh track came on so all her neighbors would think I got the joke too. I thought that drinking and driving meant any drink. I burst into tears the first time I heard about drinking and driving. My dad always had a Dr. Pepper when we went places and I thought he was going to go to jail forever. That my grandma G had a glass eye and that she lost her eye in a bar fight. Nope, took me until I was 20 to discover she just had a lazy eye, and my dad and his brothers always told kids that story every holiday meetup. The teachers sleep at school. My stepdad had an old truck with 2 gas tanks that he would flip a switch to change from one to the other. He had us convinced that he would magically steal gas from other vehicles. He would tell us to pick one and we would watch the gas dial go from E to F while driving on the highway. Blew my mind. You know those animatronic dinosaurs at museums? I knew they were robots, but as a child I was convinced that the robot was unaware of its animatronic status. I believed that if the robot wanted to, it could and would step over the barrier and eat me and everyone else. This fear was compounded when my dad, more than once, picked me up and pretended he would drop me down the other side of the barrier. That sex was literally sleeping next to one another and making moaning sounds. I heard things I wanna forget. I thought a baby just randomly appeared in a woman's womb. I stayed awake crying about it because I didn't want to become pregnant. I had no idea that morning sickness was associated with pregnancy. My coach was concerned when I shrugged my shoulders and stated that's what was probably causing my sluggishness at football camp practice. Not me, but my brother was convinced for a few weeks that some cows had longer legs on one side of their body so they could stand on hills. Those are the ones we get lean beef from. My dad used to make stir fry fairly often with chicken. One night as I was eating it, I asked what the meat was. Octopus, he replied. Seemed logical enough at the time, so I just accepted it and moved on with my life. From then on, whenever we had stir fry, someone would inevitably ask, "How's your octopus?" And I would answer, "Fine," or something similar. fast forward. I'm 18. Home from college on break and we are having stir fry. How's your octopus? Fine. You guys are all assholes. I didn't know cars have a turn signal lever, so I thought the car knew where we were going. I thought the car would use the arrows to tell my parents where to turn. The dinosaurs were still alive on another island, and I kept asking my mother if we could go to the island with all the dinosaurs. Then she told me they were all dead. Clearly your mom never heard of Isla Nubla. I used to watch my dad go to the ATM, look at the receipt, and get grumpy/frustrated. I knew how bank accounts and ATMs worked, but the kid logic part of my brain figured that they also kind of worked like slot machines, in that when you conducted some transaction on them, you got that slip with 3 icons on it. If you got one with 3 cherries, for example, you would take it inside and they would deposit $50 or whatever into your account. I figured he was frustrated because he kept losing all the time. I even asked him a few times when he was looking at the receipt, "Did you win?" And he was like, "No." For some reason, I thought every car that was made had to do a crash test. Probably because my dad once told that our car had a very good rating in the crash test. I was amazed by the fact that old cars were repaired so well before being sold. When I was young my parents told me that if I kept leaving the fridge open then I would freeze the whole world and then no one would like me. My mom told me babies came from pumpkin patches. I thought that if you eat a pumpkin you'll become pregnant. That all bald men were kidnappers. No idea where it came from. I really don't think I was kidnapped as a child, but if I was it was definitely a bald man that did it. I thought that pregnant was a bad word. I was the most sheltered kid ever. I'm with you. I was corrected once for saying it. A woman is expecting. My brother and I wrote letters to Santa and our dad would open up the coal furnace door and we would throw them in the fire. We believed they would go directly to the North Pole. My mom had us throw our letters in a wood fire, and when sparks came down and rested on the burning paper, those were the fire fairies and they carried the ashes to Santa where he magically reassembled them and read your letter. I often got caught doing stupid stuff when I was a young rascal. When I would get home my dad would say a little birdie told him he seen me do such and such with the boys. Up until I was 8 or 9 maybe I believed my father had some sort of snitch pigeon keeping an eye on me. My dad also made me believe there were little gnomes working in ATM and vending machines. Escalator stairs were one-time use and just kinda piled up under the floor. My brother used to think that a man sat under the escalators and operated them. He also thought that man's name was James and that was his real dad, not our dad. So every time we passed the escalators at the mall my brother would scream at our dad, "You're not my real dad. James is my real dad." My brother has always had a vivid imagination. I have no earthly idea where he got this from. He is currently trying to become a writer/director/producer/etc. Also, he's the spitting image of my dad, so there's no question of paternity there. My brother is just a fucking weirdo. When I was about 4, my older sister told me that since the population of Japan was so high, Japanese people slept sideways on their beds so they could fit more people on every bed. I believed it until I went to a sleepover at 13 and suggested that we sleep Japanese style on the bed so everyone could fit. Blue fire was cold. 2 gems from my youth. I used to think my testicles were the eggs of my future children. Like, one day they would hatch and I'd have 2 kids. I thought safe sex meant someone left their clothes on. That fat people explode when they get too fat. That the gender of a baby depended on which person was trying harder during sex. I thought the black market was an actual market, like under a bridge or something. I believed this for longer as I want to admit. Not sure if this was just a UK thing, but as a child I had some of those gooey jelly alien toys that came in plastic eggs, and the big rumor on the playground at the time was, if you put a boy alien and girl alien in the same egg and put it in the fridge, they would make a new baby alien overnight. I told my parents about it and told them I was doing it. While in bed, my parents added the extra baby alien overnight. So when I woke up and found the third alien, I lost it, went into school and told everyone. For years I swore blind it was true and really happened. It was a very heartbreaking day when I realized what had happened. When I was younger, my dad upgraded the speaker setup for the TV to include surround sound. The rear speakers were mounted to the ceiling and were large white boxes. On the front of the speakers it had the numbers 3508. I always thought that was kind of strange until many years later I realized they were both speakers mounted upside down. My brother had me convinced for a while that each person had to have a unique favorite color, and since his was blue, I had to change mine. On my first day of kindergarten, we had to introduce ourselves and say our favorite color. I was super stressed out because the kids in front of me picked the good colors, and I kinda panicked and told everyone my favorite color was gray. I thought homosexuals were people who only had sex at home. That dogs were boys and cats were girls. I thought that my stomach was actually the entire volume of my body. Eating food would pile it all up, as if putting it into a bag. When I was asked why I would drink or eat smaller foods when I was full, my reasoning was there are still cracks between all the other food I ate, so it can fall through those gaps. I thought everything contained water and could be dehydrated and turned to powder. Dehydrated water. Someone told me that Tony Hawk played Darth Vader in Star Wars, and I believed it for an embarrassingly long time. When I was younger, our garage always had a very distinct smell. My parents told my siblings and I that the smell in our garage was the smell of burnt tires because my dad would work on cars and dirt bikes as a hobby. Being the middle child, we always tend to find out the family secrets, whether we want to or not. Fast forward to when I'm 15 years old. I standing in a parking lot with my mother and two girls I was in a quince with. As we were all waiting in this parking lot for our friend who was having the quince, I started to smell burnt tires. I said to my mom that it smelled like burnt tires. My mom and the two girls all started chuckling. I was confused as to what was funny, and the two girls said to me that I was not smelling burnt tires. My mom eventually told me what that smell was, and she just tried to convince me my smelling was off. I still put 2 and 2 together that night. In short, I was 15 years old when I found out that my dad was a huge pothead and would just smoke pot all the time in our garage. Also, burnt tires and weed should not smell the same.